Hey everybody, welcome back to the Metal Mill 52 workshop. My name is Bill, this is my shop. We're building an LBSC Tich locomotive. This is the 70th episode and it's starting to really look like something. In this episode we'll cover cleaning out the boiler and preparing it for the final assembly, and then of the assembly of all the attachments that you see here. So without further ado, I'll just stop babbling and do a little walk around real quick of what the beautiful little boiler looks like right now. Really excited to get this far. The next step will be to assemble it in the chassis, make some final adjustments and some testing and all, and we'll cover that all in the next episode. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Please ask me any questions that you might have, and please give me a thumbs up if you would, if you don't have a question but you want to just keep encouraging me. I do appreciate that. So thanks everybody. Hope you have a great day. Hope you enjoy this episode. Take care. Okay, to prepare the boiler, the first thing I'm going to do is clean it out, clean it and degrease it. I'm going to use some of this marine clean stuff from the POR 15 people. I'll mix it with some hot water and soak it, let it soak just a little while, and then I'll rinse it out with fresh water and then scrub it out good with some Dawn dishwashing liquid that cuts grease. The whole idea is to have it very clean, so that any of the cutting oils that I used in the drilling and tapping processes in the past will all be gone. You want the inside of the boiler to not have any grease when you're trying to make steam. So that'll be the next thing. Okay, here's after the rinse. I don't know if you can see it, but there are a couple of little specks, little pieces of metal and so forth. Not a lot, but enough that I'm really glad I went ahead and did this rinse step and the degrease step with that marine clean. So now I'll dump this out. It's biodegradable, so that's another nice feature of this stuff. I'll dump this out and then rinse and let the boiler soak in some Dawn. Okay, here's the boiler after it's soaked in the marine clean stuff and then rinsed out and then soaked for about 2 hours in a bucket full of Dawn dishwashing liquid, and it's as squeaky clean as it's been since I've had it. So I rinsed it out really well 2 or 3 times, and I immersed it in cold water and rinsed it again, and now I'm just letting it air dry. As you can see, got on a little towel here. So we'll let this dry out today and commence the reassembly sometime tomorrow. I did just in case you're wondering, I stuck my finger in there and just to make sure I got any kind of grease residue or anything like that out, and it's clean. It's just still damp right now, but really happy with how clean it is. Wrapping up for the evening after having scrubbed out the boiler. I made a list of all the stuff I need to do here. I thought I'd go over it real quick in case you're wondering, like I'm making a whole episode about this, but I think it's important, and this kind of illustrates how I like to think through the overall process. So the reassembly, the degrease and the wash and scrub, we've got that done. The first thing that I'll reassemble will be the blower assembly. I'll document that on video. Then the regulator, and there's a whole lot of little things that go along with the regulator. The steam supply line, obviously, that goes to the cylinders, the superheater, the fit on that, the snifter valve that goes out to the front, and also big thing is check how all these things fit in the smoke box. Last, add insulation. That's the thin brass sheet that'll protect the copper boiler shell from the steel jacket. Add the steel jacket, add the jacket bands, add the water gauge. I figured I'd do that after I put it back in the jacket because wrestling the jacket on, I didn't want to break the water gauge. It's a little bit on the delicate side. And once those are together, then I can add the rear door and latch and the top turret, the steam turret, where it goes right here, that has the whistle valve in it, and then the pressure gauge that will come off of the steam turret, then the top hat, what I call the top hat, and the pressure relief valve, which goes here, and then the right hand and left hand clacks. And all those things have to be fit flush using washers and making sure they're as tight as they can be and secure as they can be so that there's no leaks. So that's the list, and that's what we'll have fun doing over the next week or two. But first I'm going to give the boiler probably a couple days to dry out. I'll check in tomorrow and see if it's still damp inside. I want to wait till it's bone dry before I put it together. Well, a critical part of the reassembly is making sure I have everything in the correct orientation. So with the blower valve, I couldn't remember, so I put it back together with the top steam turret there. And yes, I do need it angled off, and what I did was I marked a little magic marker, Sharpie marker spot on the boiler itself so that I'll have that oriented correctly. Alright, here's the blower assembly all fully installed. It's not permanently installed yet, but I wanted to go ahead and get everything in place and tighten down, especially tighten down the parts that use the little brass washers, or copper washers I should say. So it's ready to go. I'm going to put it together tomorrow. I'll just let it sit tonight, and so I can take it apart and the muscle memory will be fresh. To line up the tube with the fitting, I used a little drill bit stuck through the fitting and into the blower tube, and that's all it takes to help align it. So that's all ready to go. I've got my Permatex. This thing, people use a lot of different things to seal steam lines, and the Permatex Ultra Copper is by far and away the most reliable. I've used it all over all the little contentious joints on the Allen Mogul, and it works. It's perfect, and it's easy to get at automotive stores. It's not cheap. It's like $13 a tube, something like that, $11 or $13, but it's well worth it. So I'll just put a little dab on a paintbrush and just paint around the threads with that. So that's all it will take, hopefully, to get a nice seal. So once we get that installed tomorrow night, then the next thing I'll dry fit and install the regulator in there, and then we can continue on with everything on the list. Where's the list? Here it is. Yeah, steam supply, superheater, snifter. So there's a lot of things that go with the regulator. I'll need to have the smoke box handy and installed. And that's about it for this one. Oh, I know one more thing I wanted to show. How nice and clean. I don't know how well that'll show up, but you can see the tubes and everything inside there is very clean looking. Really pleased with how clean I got the boiler. Alright, here we are, the second night of putting the boiler stuff together, and I'm sorry I didn't bring my iPhone to film the assembly work last night, but as you can see, I've installed the blower line here, and there's the front part. It's all sealed. What I used just a tiny bit, and LBSC talks about this. It was page 165 of the book. He says put a little smear of plumber's putty. So that's literally what I did. I put a little bit out on this lid, and I used a paintbrush like this. Matter of fact, it was this one right here, to just get a little smear of the putty and just fill up the threads basically on either end of the blower line. And I've installed the blower line. It's been sitting there overnight, and of course I put this line on just to make sure I had everything in the proper orientation. So I'll take this off to get it out of the way, and then tonight's project is to install the throttle, and here is the regulator if you're British. Here is it's a Rob Roy style regulator, which I covered extensively the making of. It's a bronze tube and a bronze steam end here, and basically just a stainless steel screw type valve that comes in this end and blocks off the flow. So it has the paper gasket around the back. That won't get any sealant. Got my little stainless steel screws here ready to go. There's the steam inlet pipe that sticks in the top of it and will be sticking out of the steam dome, so to speak. And then there's the steam outlet pipe What I did, I carefully marked this one when I made this. I don't know if it'll show up here or not, but I wrote the word back. There it is. So this is the part, the back part, that goes into the regulator itself, and then the front part, which has a longer thread, goes into this piece which screws into the front of the boiler. And I also have the other half, so to speak. This is the superheater and the throttle connection and the snifter valve. I have that all ready to go, along with the smoke box over here, so that when I put everything together I can test fit it and make sure the alignment is correct. And if you're wondering what these 3 screws are here, this is the handiest way I could figure out to screw this into the front of the boiler. And I've got a washer there to give it a good finish, or a good flush seal as well. So I'll put those in, screw this into the correct orientation with the mark going straight up. There's the vertical mark there. So that'll be straight up, and that's where it's nice and tight. Then I can take these long screws out and screw on the small, the superheater and all that. Well, I'd hope to finish the installation of the regulator tonight, but I'm actually pretty happy that I didn't rush things and didn't break anything. And also I came up with a better solution for this awkward spot here. If you can see this, what I did, I took a stainless steel screw and cut it off, cut the head off, and then I rounded the end of it, cut it off to the right length to make a little stud that goes into the fitting at the base there, and actually makes it a lot easier for the alignment. And I've got a little brass washer and a stainless steel nut, which I tightened up using one of the little flat wrenches, tiny wrenches that I bought from Blackgates Engineering. So glad I have that. So it all fits, it's all good to go. I'm just going to let it sit now. It's kind of late tonight. I'll put this to bed and come back tomorrow and finish the installation, show you how that goes. Okay, this is like take 3 on trying to assemble a regulator inside the boiler. I think I finally figured it out. What I've done is I've fastened the connecting tube, for lack of a better word, into the front steam header. I've got the washer in place, and as you can see I put a small amount of the Permatex copper thread sealant on it. I also put some on the end that's going to go inside the regulator, and I also have the regulator base is firmly screwed into place here. So I'm gonna turn the camera off and do this because it's a two-handed operation, but I'll hold the boiler in my left hand, then carefully feed this in and get it threaded into the front of the regulator and simultaneously thread it into the front opening on the boiler, and then tighten that up quickly to the right spot, right orientation, and then I'll double check it with the superheater over here. I'll bring you back for that step. Okay, perhaps because I'd rehearsed it several times, that went fairly smoothly. I did use vice grips to get it into the right place, and I was trying to be careful not to chew up the outside of the rim there, but I've got it in the correct orientation. So now I'll take out the 2 long screws. If you recall, this is the stud that's going to remain in there. So I'll take out the 2 long screws that I use for handling, and I'll place the superheater in its spot and make sure it all lines up properly, and then I'll know that I'm basically done with this part. Okay, so far so good. That went on pretty well. I did have to give it another little tiny bit of a twist to get it in the exact right spot, but it's easy to tell because the screws lined up so much easier for the superheater thing. So now I'm going to put that little brass washer and stainless steel nut in place with my little Blackgates Engineering flat wrench, and we'll tighten that down, and I'll bring you back and show you what that looks like. Okay, I used some forceps there and put a little thread sealer on the steam tube and put it in place. I'll have to be careful when I put the jacket on because that does stick up just a wee bit over the top of the boiler. But here is the front assembly in place, so now the next thing to do is to put the smoke box in its place and make sure everything is oriented correctly. I'm pretty sure it will be, but let's double check that too. Definitely an interesting view here. You can see the superheater and there's the exhaust line and how close the snifter valve is. Really don't like that design, but there's the valve, or the steam line, the one that goes to the bottom. That's the one that'll connect for providing steam to the cylinders, so that lines up nicely with that hole. Just pull it over a little bit. And the snifter valve itself, let me get this. Here's the snifter valve, and this is the bottom part will stick through that hole. And it's pretty obvious to me I'm going to have to do a little bit of bending on that snifter valve line to get everything to line up, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'll wait till the final assembly. I don't want to break anything right now. There's the smoke box in place without the wrapper, the regulator with the handle reinstalled. So this is a good stopping place. I'm just going to let this all sit tonight, and tomorrow I believe I'll put the boiler insulation, that little thin brass sheet, on the boiler, and I'll try to slip the jacket in place, because once the jacket's in place, then I can install the two clacks on either side, the top turret, the little steam dome regulator, and the only other thing is the water sight glass. And those are all delicate kind of things that can be done after the jacket is in place. So the jacket will be next. I'll show you that. And a productive evening tonight. I got the jacket installed. I put the 5mm, the 5/1000 thick brass sheet underneath, kind of like the insulation, just to make sure the steel shell doesn't dig into the copper of the boiler. I've reinstalled everything except for the glass. I want to watch a Keith Appleton video about this. This is a Blackgates Engineering kit, and I have the glass tube ready to cut, and I bought a little cutter off of eBay, I think it was, a little glass cutter, but I've not done a lot of that before. I've got a little steel rod here. It's a 5/32 rod, so I'm confident that everything lines up, but I want to take my time and approach that. But everything else has been installed now. This is the regulator. It moves, got movement here, got the little pressure gauge, blower line. Of course, the only thing that's not installed on the back part is the whistle line, which that will be installed on the final assembly. But I've used a little Loctite 542 Keith Appleton style on a lot of the fittings. I've got both the clacks installed, left hand and right hand clack, and of course the little dome and the pressure gauge underneath there. That I got that from Blackgates Engineering as well. So let me do a little side view here. I really love this, getting an appreciation for how pretty this color is, that dark hunter green with the brass and bronze accent pieces. Looks really good. There we go. So we'll finish off the sight gauge tomorrow, and we'll call it good at that point, and then it'll just be final assembly after that. And I'm glad I watched the Keith Appleton video last night about cutting these glass sight gauges. So as you can see, I'm using the glass to make sure the alignment is perfect. I had previously marked the place to cut, which is the thicker Sharpie mark there, and I'm going to be using, I'll do this off camera, but I'm going to use this little cutter. This is the same one that Keith used. It's like a radial cutter, and I know I got this off of eBay, so hopefully it works as good for me as it does for him. And I have some sandpaper here ready to smooth the edges, so I'm going to cut this off camera, cut it and break the glass, and hopefully not break anything else. I'll bring you back when I'm ready to reassemble. Okay, the little cutter worked beautifully. Let me show you. There's the fresh cut, and that's obviously the piece it came from. So I haven't sanded it yet, but I will sand both of those so I have smooth edges. but I'm really pleased, thrilled that came out so well. So thank you, Keith, for showing me how to do that. And continue with my homage to Keith Appleton. I'm using this is the Black Gauge Engineering water sight gauge, and I'm using the little red nitrile O-rings that came with the kit, and they slip on the tube, and then you just tighten it. I know Keith said tighten both of them at once, so I'll put the camera down so that I can finish tightening, but I'll show you the bottom one as well. It's got the, I don't know if the red, yeah, you can see the red nitrile thing in there, and it's all aligned good, and we just go finger tight at first. Yeah, this is where I got to do both of them at the same time with two hands. And there is a little cap that will go on top, so I'll bring you back and show you when I have this all buttoned down. Alright, I'm going to make this the last segment of this week's episode, the boiler cleaning and a reassembly. So here's the checklist. We degreased, we washed, we attached the blower, we attached the regulator and all of its accoutrements. We added the insulation, we added the jacket bands, and on number 8 I just finished adding the water sight gauge, rear door and latch, top turret, pressure gauge. Now that probably, or very possibly, will need to be repositioned. I haven't taken a look at how that orients with everything in the cab, so I'll cover that on the final assembly. So pressure gauge and the top hat and relief valve, we got that, and the right hand and left hand clacks. They're all installed and ready to rock and roll. So the next episode will be the final assembly of the locomotive. Before I do that, before I put on the smoke box on the front, I'll probably see if I can put some low pressure air through the boiler just to try to test, see if I find any obvious leaks. It's always a good idea. So we'll do that, and we'll do the final assembly. So that'll be the next episode, will be final assembly. So thank you all for being part of this journey. Oh, one more thing I wanted to point out. The one thing I haven't done is a drain valve for the water sight gauge. I never made one before, but it does come with a little acorn in the kit, and it uses a 3/32 inch tube. So I've got a piece of copper. I can make a drain line as part of the final assembly as well. But thank you all for being part of this journey. I hope you have enjoyed this one. To me, this has been one of the most exciting and rewarding episodes, getting to put together all this stuff that we've made over the last year or so. So if you have any questions, please ask. If you would, just if you don't have a question and you'd like to encourage me, please give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate that. I love to see it, and it does encourage me to keep going and publishing the videos. So thanks everybody. Hope you have a great week.